Hello everybody and welcome back to Blue Rose Minis. Today I'm going to be painting up this guy from Nurgal for my husband because he is starting yet another army. So let's see how this goes. So first of all, I painted all of the little adornments with Balthasar Gold. Now this was not a pleasant experience for me, and I'll tell you why. Because Balthasar Gold, and I swear to the Emperor, hates me. So just to get a nice even, you can tell it's gold color, I had to put maybe 5-6 coats of this on this one model alone, and my golly was that frustrating. I would have rather been working with Brass Scorpion, but my husband wanted it to look almost identical to the way that Warhammer TV and GW painted up this particular model. So I had to unfortunately use Balthasar Gold, and you can just see me going back in for more paint, back in for more paint, because it is just transparent. And I've done all the things I can do. I've mixed the pot, I've put it in mixing bowls. I believe there are like 2 or 3 mixing bowls in that, and it still just does not work out for me. But I had to go ahead and push through it because my husband wanted this specific color. I tried pleading with him to switch it to Brass Scorpion, but no go. Which also brings me to the point that I did substitute some colors from the original colors that GW used just because they were not in my position at the time. So once you are done finally getting a gold color on, we're going to be painting all of silver details with LeadBelcher. And this was quite easier for me, which is always very strange for me because LeadBelcher to me is kind of it's a lot more liquidy than the Balthasar Gold, so it just doesn't make sense why one goes on better than the other. But anyway, moving on, I am putting a Screamer Pink on the cloak. And you will see me switch brushes because I could not find my good brushes and just kind of had to go with my second bests. And then once you are done with the Screamer Pink on the cloak, we are going to go ahead and coat the entire model. Sorry, we are actually going to put on Abaddon Black first, and then we are going to coat the entire model with Agrax EarthShade. So my Agrax EarthShade is actually more towards the bottom, so even if I shake it up, I don't get too much on the lid, so I do have to periodically stick my brush into the paint cup itself in order to get any of the shade color actually on my brush. But after you set that aside and let it dry for about 30 minutes, you're gonna come back and you're gonna recoat the cloak that this character has in Screamer Pink. You're as well gonna dry brush it with, I used Warboss Green in this one. In the original tutorial, I believe they used a camel shade, but I didn't have that on hand, so I just kind of had to improvise and I used Warboss Green instead, which actually turned out pretty good. So when you're recoating the cloak, you're gonna want to keep away from the recesses where the shade has settled. And then after that coat of paint has dried, you're going to go ahead and highlight the sharpest edges of the cloak. I know that sounds weird, but you're going to highlight the sharpest edges with Pink Horror. And now we're going to move on to highlighting all of the silver details with Stormhost Silver. And for this particular model, I chose to demonstrate the highlighting on the axe because it is the biggest silver object that this model has, and you can see me having a bit of a problem with the paint not having separate in the pot, and I'm just mixing and trying to get it to recombine. But once I've done that, I'm just gonna go ahead and do light highlights. I try to have like space in between some highlights, especially if it's along a longer edge, just to give it some more definition and some more character. After that, I'm gonna use Dawnstone to highlight all of the Abaddon Black. In the original video, they use, I believe, Dark Reaper, but I had to improvise once again. So now we are gonna be painting all of his degraded skin, starting with the base coat of RAkarth Flesh. Next, we're gonna hit it with Druchii Violet. After the violet has dried, we're gonna hit it with Crimson to make it look more distressed. You can also do this to the little nurgling he is stepping on. So after that, we are just going to hit it with another coat of RAkarth Flesh. And then we are carefully going to paint the guts in Screamer Pink. Now you could definitely paint the guts while you're painting the cloak, that is not a problem. I did that to some of the guts, some of the tongues, and some of the tentacles that this guy has as well, and I didn't find it an issue earlier on. So now we're going to be painting the little horn that's coming out of his shoulder, and we're basing it with RAkarth Flesh as well. And since I'm just going to be using a bunch of shades after this, I am just going to go ahead and base coat all the flame as well, and I believe it's Celestra Gray. So I'm just going to base paint the fire, and then I'm going to hit it with 2 different shades. Well, I'm going to use 2 different shades, not necessarily on the fire, but yeah, just bear with me and continue watching the rest of the video. And really fast, what I found helped when painting the flames is to have the paint almost runny and almost transparent or translucent. It helps just get into all of the crevices, and it just makes your life a lot better. But of course, when it comes to it being closer to a part that you've already painted, you want it to be more solid rather than liquid, so you can just go ahead and adjust the paint to water ratio as you go along. So once all of that is done, we are going to go ahead and go in with Agrax EarthShade on the little spike he has on his shoulder. We're going to be applying 2 coats of this to this spike. One will engulf the spike completely, the other will go about halfway. And then while you're waiting for the first coat to dry on that spike, you're going to go ahead and grab Coelia GreenShade, I believe that's what it's called, and you're going to put this all over the fire as well. Now, it doesn't matter if it pulls too much or you put too much on the fire, because we will be coming back and covering most of it back up with a different color. So now I'm just going to take the time to go ahead and paint the little skulls that he has in RAkarth Flesh. Sorry, I can't talk right now. And then once they have dried, I'm going to go ahead and hit them with some Agrax EarthShade to bring out the detail. And then those little pieces of this model will be done. So here you can see me struggling with one of the skulls that this figure has. So I just went ahead and repainted it with the RAkarth Flesh and let that dry before putting on Agrax EarthShade. Now I do paint these miniatures quite quick because I only typically use one coat of paint for whatever color that I am using. So I usually just give it a few seconds to dry and then I hit it with a shade. But that's typically not the way you want to go about doing this. So I don't recommend you do that. It's just something I do because I am very impatient sometimes when it comes to some of these more intricate models. But I digress, and moving on, I am just going to be taking some Dawnstone, I believe, and just coating that on the fire, of course avoiding all of the recesses. So coming to the final step of our, I believe, 20 paint tutorial, we are going to be painting all of the nurgling eyes that we can physically see with Yriel Yellow. So it's going to be the one on his triangle fire thing. I don't know what that's called, and some of the nurglings that are under his foot. And of course I forgot the little slide charm that's hanging off the end of his axe. I went ahead and painted that with LeadBelcher, as well as slapped on some more Agrax EarthShade. But if I do happen to get this up tonight, happy 4th of July, guys. If not, then I hope you guys had a great 4th of July. And I thank you for joining me on Blue Rose Minis.